Welcome to the Winning Wellness Podcast, where we explore health, wellness, performance, and try to improve not only your quantity of life, but your quality of life. I'm your host, Mitch Schwartzman. All right, it's just me and you guys for this episode today. We're going to talk about injuries, recovering, healing, kind of the process that you go through after an injury. I'll share some of my own experience and what I've seen with athletes, and basically my top tips for making that comeback and being bigger and better and stronger than you were even before you got injured. So here we go. My top tip number one is to just stay safe. It's the fable of invincibility is that young people they don't understand how fragile and delicate our bodies are. It's easy to get hurt. It's easy to get hurt. I had a couple of experiences with that myself. I was 8 years old and playing army in the backyard and climbed up real high in this tree, and a branch snapped out from under my feet, and I ended up breaking both my arms. So they put the casts on me in the hospital, and I only broke my right wrist, but they casted my right arm up to my armpit almost. They didn't do that like bottom brace, but they did the full forearm around the corner to the upper arm, and then my left arm I broke my radius, like a little bit, not quite the elbow, but like close to it. And so they gave me those two, and so I was kind of like the 90-degree boy for 6 weeks, and then they put on shoulder casts for another 6 weeks or so. And then 3 days after I got those casts off, I got bit by a dog and had to go get stitches. So I think my go-to lessons from that experience were, one, keep yourself safe. Just, I climbed up. I was doing a good job. It wasn't me. I didn't slip and fall, but that dang branch broke out from under me. So I was in a vulnerable position, and so the gravity got the better of me. And then two, as soon as I got those casts off, a dog bit me, and I had to go right back to the hospital for more care. So you never know. You never know how long your health is going to last. So just because you just had a health issue doesn't mean that you're done having health issues. And then while I was hurt, I'm proud to say that I was a young meathead. I was concerned about the presidential fitness test in school, and so I recognized that with the broken arms, my push-ups weren't going to be so good. So I did a bunch of sit-ups, and I couldn't really go running, but I would just do a bunch of sit-ups, and I would just kind of think about that. And as I was at home, not going to school because I couldn't write, so my mom's homeschooled me for a couple months. This back in the 90s, so they basically sent home like a couple of worksheets, and they called it even. And I found a way to stay active and busy, with my limited resources. And so those are some takeaways from that. And then I guess I didn't learn my lesson because 14 years later, I had a really similar accident, a little bit bigger and more grand. I had a hiking accident, had a bigger fall, fell and shattered my skull, shattered my jaw, shattered my humerus on my right side, broken ribs, broken back, transverse process on some of my vertebrae broke. Yeah, just lots of good times. About 26 days in the hospital, and had a lot of lost a bunch of muscle mass and had all this kinds of trauma, had multiple surgeries. And so I wish I had learned my lesson as like an 8-year-old boy, but I had to go back in and get schooled again by gravity at age 22 and get beat up again. But some of the lessons I learned with those experiences are what I'm going to share today. But I don't have photos and videos of myself from age 8. Yeah, taking a look at that skull. These are not the greatest x-rays, but you can kind of see some issues there. If we zoom in over here, you can kind of see that some of that break in the skull. I don't have great images from the post-surgery with the hardware that they put in, some plates and some titanium screws and some titanium plates and titanium screws. So, and here's the elbow. Yeah, that humerus. So for quite a while post injury, I thought that I had landed in sort of like a people's elbow situation on the ground. But what they told me is that I was actually bracing myself and I stuck my arm out, straightened my arm out, and I was so rigid in that arm is that my radius actually broke and went up into my humerus and just split it like when Robin Hood is shooting arrows at a target and they shoot that next arrow and it comes in and just shatters that first arrow. Or at least that's what I tell myself to make myself feel better about it, anyways. But my humerus was in several pieces, and so they took in a few plates, and I think it's like 15 pins and screws, and just got it back in action. So yeah, shout out to my care team. That was Dr. Stephanie Canaday that hooked me up with a working arm and elbow. Dr. Peter Yoon that fixed up some plates on my head there. You can even see some of the staples there and all that good stuff. So I say that to say this. Let's stay safe. We're not invincible. Niels Bohr said that an expert in the field is somebody who's made every mistake there is, or something like that. But I'm close to the right quote there. Um, but yeah, I've made mistakes as far as the fable of invincibility. I thought I was unbreakable, and then I got broke. So I hope you guys stay safe. And with athletes, maybe being silly in the weight room or silly on the weekends. Sometimes I've had athletes just come in and they've got lazy stories about why there's scars on their arms or their leg is broken or whatever. Yeah, it's okay to be young and silly, but with that foolishness, you just got to watch out for just self-care. So I hope you guys watch out for each other. And then within the weight room, making smart choices about your training. Yeah, just the small things. So that's point one is let's stay safe. Point two is that I want you guys to keep a positive mindset. Not only do you just like try to stay in a good mood, but you have a drive to heal and make a comeback. So for me, my best example is that a few days after laying in the hospital, I had the I was working with the St. Louis Rams at the time. The GM, the general manager for the team, Billy Devaney, came into the hospital and stood at the foot of my bed, and he told me that when I was ready to come back to work, they were ready to have me back to work. And I remember just having like this clarity thinking, like I went from like all scatterbrain thinking, emotions and things like that, and then I got into tunnel vision, and I just knew. I just knew, hey, I'm gonna get patched up, and I'm gonna get back to work. So, if you can ever provide to other people motivation and drive and focus, do so. And then if no one is handing you direction like that, just just create your own direction, create an image in your head or a drive and a desire for how you're going to make your comeback. So positive mindset is you just there's no there's no substitute for that. So I actually interviewed Dr. Darren Barnes. Maybe that was episode 14, but and Dr. Barnes he has a doctorate in athletic training. So with positive mindset and just having drive to make a comeback and what I was talking about with Dr. Darren Barnes. Dr. Darren Barnes, he talks about this biopsychosocial model. And with the biopsychosocial model, your attitude and what's going on around you plays a role in how much pain that you are in. And this is part of this pain cycle that Dr. Martin Schmaltz has on his website. And so basically it goes that you have pain, and that leads to muscle guarding and restricted mobility, and that leads to muscle weakness and atrophy, that leads to decreased function, that leads to emotional and mental stress. But emotional and mental stress leads to pain. So it's this evil merry-go-round. But if you start to do some stress management, can you see how that might reduce your pain instead of increasing it? So when I think about Billy Devaney coming to the hospital and kind of reminding me that I have a role with this really special and unique organization, that kind of lit a fire under my butt to just get my mind right and get my body right. And so I knew, I knew my direction right away, and I was able to fulfill that drive. But if you look at this pain cycle here, it's really important that we have a positive mindset. We keep our stress levels low, just like young Mitch doing sit-ups and watching action movies while his arms were healing with the broken arms. And then 22-year-old Mitch being in the hospital and just kind of having drive to get the body right and get out of there and move on with life. So feeling sorry for yourself is going to be super tempting, but it's basically a non-option. It does not help you out. You have to come to terms and you have to have a positive mindset. And then the third thing is how do you eat? Are you going from training between 1 and 4 hours a day to training 0 hours a day, or doing like 20 minutes of physical therapy every day? That doesn't necessitate the same fueling, right? So if you're overfilling your gas tank with too many carbs and just too much fuel in general, that can lead to not only you being injured, but now you are maybe gaining some excess fat. And then when you return to play and you're getting healthy and active again, now you have a different body that's maybe a little bit not as athletically built, let's say. Not that you can't have a few extra pounds and be a fantastic athlete, but for some athletes that really does not help the situation. And then on the other side of the coin, you don't get to starve yourself and just be sad, because if you're starving yourself and you're not eating enough calories or protein, then all that muscle you built up is going to dwindle during your injury. And then when you come back from your injury and that heals, now you have to fix your joint or whatever the injury was, and you have to regain uh, your muscle mass, which is not the worst thing in the world, but it's inconvenient. When I had my fall at age 22, and I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks there, I lost about 50 pounds in a matter of 2 weeks. So this is a super extreme example, but I went from like 219 and pretty darn lean, and then within 2 weeks I was in the upper 160s, because when I was in the hospital, well, I did a lot of bleeding, and instead of me eating like several gargantuan meals every day, eating 6,000 plus calories a day, they put a little IV in my arm and just gave me like glucose and maybe some other like highly important micronutrients. But that stress and that trauma on my body really changed what was going on with me. And I woke up, and not only did I have the scar tissue, but I had lost all this good muscle mass that I had built up, and I was able to regain it. But it took quite a while, and it was a big inconvenience. On top of being hurt, it was not fun to have lost the muscle that I had been pursuing with such a passion obsession for years. So, kind of the reason why you might say that my metabolism maybe did what it did and caused me to lose a bunch of weight, or what other people are going through. And one theory is that there's the ebb and flow phase of energy expenditure during trauma. So, from an evolutionary aspect, you would think that trauma would cause an ebb or a slowing of the metabolism. So, think about like your great, 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 great caveman grandfather going into a hard winter and not having any food storage, or maybe having an injury and not being able to hunt. Well, if the metabolism just keeps roaring like normal, that body's going to eat itself up and that individual is probably going to perish. But if there's stress and there's the ebbing of the metabolism, you slow that down, kind of like you're hibernating almost, then that buys you time. Slower metabolism is not going to utilize all of your fat storage and your muscle storage quite as quickly. And then there's the flow phase, where it kind of comes back up to speed. So I don't know what other people who have had some injuries like myself experience, but all I know is 2 weeks went by and I was down like 50 pounds. So I'm not sure exactly what my metabolism was doing. I would say it probably did not slam to a stop like within like the first hour of me getting injured. My guess is that it took a couple of weeks for it to slow down. And by the time that happened, I had lost a bunch of weight. So This is a unusual, strange case one that I hope you guys are not going through. Um, but what you can do is you can realize that, okay, 2 days ago I was running and sprinting and lifting weights, and maybe today I'm not. And so your nutrition should reflect that. You're probably going to want about as much protein as you're eating when you were healthy and active. But do you want as much carbs? Do you want the extra bars and maybe the orange juice and the second and third serving of pasta or rice or whatever? Those are things that you might want to trim just so that your body's not doing silly things like packing on some fat pounds. And then you also don't want to be depressed and skip meals and things like that. You still want to get that protein in to help maintain your muscle mass. Okay, my fourth tip that I have for you guys is how to train. Right? So just because we're injured, just because we're not 100%, doesn't mean that you get to do nothing. It means that you have to be smart. So talking to your medical professional, whether it's a doctor or athletic trainer, you find out when they're going to clear you to get some training in. Because you know what? If your right hand is broken, you can strap things to your right wrist and still train your right upper body. If your right shoulder is messed up, maybe you just train your left arm, or maybe you train the heck out of your legs or your core or your heart and you do extra cardio. But we don't really want to just quit and give up. We want to find a way. Now, if you got hurt 5 minutes ago, it's okay to take a little bit of time to heal. We can have healing time. That's important, but it's not going to last forever. There's a little bit of like you allow like some of that inflammation process to occur, and then maybe we start playing around with some injuries or playing around with training around injuries. I say that, but keep in mind there are some really horrible effects if you've got head trauma, concussions. A lot of my athletes get concussions. If you get concussion and you're training too aggressive too soon, they actually found a link with that to this disease called Lou Gehrig's disease. And the way the story goes is that there was this baseball player who would charge hard, running bases, and sometimes run into the other guys and get concussions. And he was tough. He wouldn't take downtime. He was still having symptoms, and he would just say, I'm fine. I'll go play." And then later on in his life, he had a debilitating, paralyzing neurological condition that I would not wish on anybody. So if you get hurt, let let there be some downtime, let there be some recovery, and then start looking at how you can train around it. Be aggressive. With head trauma, be conservative. That gets you the kind of trouble that you don't want. You also don't want setbacks. Maybe you don't need to do single leg plyometrics that lead to you landing on your bad leg if you had like just hurt an ankle or an ACL or something like that. And and it's good to train just to keep your limbs strong. But one of my favorite things about that single side training, or I'll call it Hellboy training, because Hellboy is this comic book character with one really crazy strong side and this one kind of normal side. Um, but with crossover training, our brain does something really cool where if my right arm is all beat up, if I train my left arm, my brain actually helps my right arm stay stronger. It's a weird neurological effect. And the way that our body crosses over strength from training a single side, it may be called like the crossover effect or neurological crossover. And it's also sort of like shown in something called mirror box therapy. Mirror box therapy was invented by Dr. Vilaner S. Ramachandran. So I know I just butchered that name. I'm sorry. Uh, but what he did was he took people would come to him with phantom pain. They would say, I was in a war and my arm is missing, but my brain tells me that my arm is on fire or that I'm making a fist and I'm exhausted. I'm getting muscle burn because I'm just fatigued from all that squeezing. But my arm is gone. Like, and I take medicine, I get massages, I have surgeries, and nothing makes it go away. And Dr. Ramachandran takes some wood and some mirrors, and he creates a box setup. So if my right arm is gone, then I'll stick my left arm into this wooden sleeve where I can't see my left arm, but there's a mirror sitting over here on the right side, and it creates a reflection for my brain to see a right arm. And if my right arm feels like it's burning, then I'll put maybe ice in my left hand. Or if it feels like there's muscle tension, I'll put that left hand in the box and I'll open it up and relax. And when people's brains see that image occurring, a lot of times that pain would just go away. And that's mirror box therapy. That's part of like the phenomenon of neurological crossover, you might call it. So when you're training, what do you want to focus on? Well, the top thing you want to focus on isn't necessarily like bodybuilding or strength or speed or like regaining your ability to be an athlete. Take that joint that's injured and recreate your range of motion. Grow your range of motion. That's your top priority. It's very tempting to build strength and that, like if that when my arm was basically had all that metal in it, all that trauma afterwards, I had small range of motion because my nervous system, there was muscle guarding. If you remember the pain cycle that we were just looking at a little while ago, um, that's part of it. And so I would get stronger in a small range of motion. And then anytime I would open up my range of motion, I would be super weak in that new range of motion due to the nervous system. Okay, so grow your range of motion first. Get that arm, that ankle, that knee, whatever, that shoulder. Regain your range of motion. That's your top priority. And then strengthening comes next. And then while you're doing that, you may not be able to go out and sprint around the field or to do full on practices and things like that. So you may have extra drive and extra energy. Well, do things that are going to make you better. You could do extra core work. You could watch extra game film. You could do extra cardio. Do things that are going to make you better when you make a comeback. You could clean up your eating. You could improve your eating. You could go to bed earlier. There's so many things that you're probably not doing perfectly. You take this as like a blessing in disguise and you start doing those things better. And then when you heal your injury and you have those new habits and that new training to accompany it, that's how people come back and they're better than they were before they got hurt. And that's how sometimes taking one step back actually helps you take two steps forward. Bullet number five, I guess you could call it, will be sleep. The better you sleep, the better you're going to heal whatever injury you have. Additionally, with improved sleep, they find there's a decrease in something that's called substance P. Substance P, when the more substance P that's found in your body, the higher your pain levels are perceived. So substance P has to do with just feeling pain. And so if you sleep better, you heal better and heal faster, but you actually are in less pain overall. And it improves your hormones. And when your hormones are optimal, you lose fat better, you gain muscle better, and you're happier. So that's all really important. Remember from our pain cycle image earlier that stress management is actually a part of it. So it's not just being tough 24/7. Sometimes you have to do some self-care, and sleep is right at the top of the list for that. And then what are some good sleep tips that make it dark, make it cool? So the darker the better. For cool, you'd really want it to be probably between like 66 and 68 degrees, or it's kind of a sweet spot that a lot of people will find. Make it quiet, whether you have a white noise kind of blocking out some of the excess like ambient noise, or a fan on, or you use earplugs, whatever it is, try to get it quieter. Have a routine. Do the set couple of things before you go to bed, and then give yourself enough time to sleep. You need that time to sleep because you can't get 8 hours of sleep if you're only in bed for 7 hours. Give yourself more than enough time to get a great night of sleep. And so some equipment that you might want to help your sleep would be like maybe like mouth tape to promote nasal breathing, earplugs to promote the quiet. The weighted blanket has some good research behind it. And honestly, I've got one and love it. An eye cover to maybe make your environment nice and dark. If you don't have like a sleeping mask, just take like a cozy t-shirt and just lay it on top of your eyes there. And then if you get cold feet, try maybe some thermal socks. All right, my last and final tip is to think about your skills and your performance. And so tip or bullet number 6 is skills and performance. And I want to start by saying when you're hurt, if you're an athlete and you're hurt, it's no longer your job to score goals or to protect the quarterback or to whatever, throw the shot put. It's your job to get healthy. Once you're healthy, then you can pursue those goals. So that's what this winning wellness thing is about, is that we either want to be winning well or winning our wellness. And sometimes when you lose your wellness, you have to win it back. That's why you have to have hard work and discipline and all these other things we talked about today. All right. So when you're hurt, it is not your job to perform your sport. It's your job to heal and to recover. Now, some of your sport training can accompany that, and some things that you can do while you are hurt and basically unable to go train like you normally do. Meditation and imagery of your sport. You can watch extra game film. You know, what's cool about the mind is that if you do a good enough job of doing like a mental walkthrough in your mind of emotion your brain will actually activate the motor neurons associated with those muscle fibers, so that when you go out and train, that when you get healthy and can train again, those muscles will actually fire as if they had been trained before, because the nervous system has been practicing already. These are basic concepts for staying healthy during downtime and speeding up your recovery. As far as return to play goes, make sure you have like a care provider who can kind of help step you through. And a lot of times they might say, well, you're cleared with physical therapy, but you might know I'm not 100%. I'm not even 80%. Like, what I see a lot of times is I'll see 20-year-olds working with physical therapists whose average client is like 70 or somewhere in the pretty much geriatric population. And that what that injured 20-year-old can do is way better than what a healthy 70-year-old can do. But that physical therapist may not have the sports background to understand you're healthy enough to walk around and to get to class and to have like a normal lifestyle, but you are not healthy enough to run, sprint, and jump and do all this amazing things that you're doing 6 months ago. So sometimes you need to bridge that gap and keep working. So whether that's finding a professional who can help you out, or just knowing your body and training into it, don't let yourself get pressured. If you are still healing and still way off from where you need to be, well, be patient. Still focus on that healing. Focus on getting better. So I hope that helps. Heal up and take care of yourselves. Thank you so much for listening to our Winning Wellness podcast. If you have any questions or suggestions for podcast guests or topics, you can submit those through YouTube comments. You can message me on Instagram. My handle is Mitch Schwartzman, or you can email me at coachmitchschwartzman@gmail.com.